Prince William reportedly just had Queen Camilla's own grandson physically escorted out of Windsor Castle by royal security, but the most chilling detail of this entire scandal isn't the brutal eviction itself. It is the fact that Princess Anne, the hardest working and most fiercely loyal blood royal in the entire institution, was allegedly standing right there watching it happen. She offered no statement, no intervention, and absolutely no mercy. Just a silent, undeniable nod of approval. When the Princess Royal refuses to step in and smooth over a family crisis, you know immediately that something monumental is shifting beneath the surface of the monarchy. We are not just looking at a polite disagreement over who gets to attend a weekend luncheon. We are witnessing a calculated, ruthless power play by the heir to the throne, drawing absolute borders around his future kingdom. If you enjoy breaking down these hidden royal dynamics and exposing the truth behind palace walls, hit subscribe to Crown Royal so you never miss when we drop a new breakdown. Let's get straight into it. To understand the sheer magnitude of this alleged confrontation, we have to look closely at who exactly was marched off the premises. Camilla has 5 grandchildren from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, Eliza, Gus, and Louis Lopez, along with Lola and Freddie Parker Bowles. These are regular, everyday citizens. They hold no royal titles, they carry no HRH prefixes, and they serve absolutely no constitutional role in the British monarchy. Yet, for nearly 2 decades, the palace PR machine has worked overtime to weave them into the fabric of royal life. When Charles and Camilla first married, integrating her civilian family was a deliberate strategy to normalize her presence and reduce massive public skepticism. And to be completely fair, the strategy worked. Camilla achieved one of the greatest personal makeovers in modern British history, transitioning from the most heavily criticized woman in England to a crowned queen. But there is a massive, unforgiving difference between personal rehabilitation for the sake of King Charles and permanently cementing a non-royal family into the untouchable inner circle of the institution. William has clearly decided that this temporary arrangement has reached its expiration date. Having security physically remove a family member sends an incredibly loud, undeniable message. But that wasn't the whole story. If we rewind the timeline just slightly, a very clear, deliberate pattern of exclusion begins to reveal itself, proving this Windsor eviction was not an isolated incident. In late 2024, Camilla's family experienced what felt like their ultimate victory. They were formally invited to the highly exclusive Christmas celebrations at Sandringham. It was the ultimate symbol of belonging, signaling to the world that they were officially part of the royal fold. Fast forward to December 2025, and that narrative violently fractured. It was abruptly announced that Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, would absolutely not be joining the king and queen for the holidays. The official palace excuse claimed it was a private, scaled-back gathering to accommodate Charles's ongoing health treatments. However, that excuse completely falls apart when you realize Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie were sitting at that very same table. They remained included despite their father, Prince Andrew, being entirely disgraced and completely stripped of his public titles in late 2025, a move heavily orchestrated by William himself. The blood royals, no matter how controversial their parents might be, were given a seat at the table. The non-royal stepchildren were left out in the cold. It was a massive demotion. When you combine that Christmas exclusion with William now physically removing Camilla's grandson from Windsor, the pattern of an escalating Cold War becomes impossible to ignore. And what happened next would expose a wound that has never truly healed. The dynamic between the Prince of Wales and his stepmother has always been a masterclass in polite, freezing tension, driven by a history that is incredibly heavy. They managed to find common ground when neutralizing mutual threats like Prince Andrew, both pushing for decisive action to protect the crown. But sharing a common enemy does not magically create lasting warmth. William was old enough to comprehend the absolute devastation his mother experienced. He watched the agonizing collapse of his parents' marriage play out on the front pages of global tabloids, and he clearly remembers Princess Diana famously stating to the world that her marriage was crowded. He had to sit through family dinners knowing the woman in the background was the architect of his mother's deepest miseries. Those kinds of foundational traumas permanently shape a person's emotional architecture. You can learn to pose for official portraits, and you can learn to be civil for the sake of the cameras, but a son never truly forgets. William kept a polite, cautious distance from Camilla for years, a relationship described by insiders as deeply chilled. The British public may have eventually acquiesced to Camilla's presence, but William's memory of the third person in his mother's marriage remains entirely intact. And as the balance of power rapidly shifts toward the Wales family, the consequences of that dark history are finally coming home to roost. There is a terrifying reality looming over Camilla's future, known in strict royal circles as the Queen Dowager transition, and it explains exactly why the palace machinery is currently vibrating with tension. The absolute second King Charles passes away. Camilla loses her official reason for existing at the center of the monarchy. Her entire world changes overnight. Her title changes, her massive staff is recalibrated, her funding shifts, and her access to prestigious grace and favor residences evaporates instantly. Her entire lifestyle and position becomes subject to the direct, unquestionable approval of the new king. The same king who watched her gradually replace his mother. William is already thinking about that future, and the palace is aggressively promoting him and preparing him for his ultimate role. Part of that preparation involves making hard, structural decisions about who will be part of his royal court and who will be exiled. William will hold absolute, unchecked authority over her household budget and her physical proximity to the crown. If you are Camilla, watching your grandson get escorted off royal property by William's security detail isn't just an awkward afternoon, it is a terrifying, flashing warning sign of the absolute isolation awaiting you in the very near future. But behind this power struggle stands a silent enforcer who makes everything infinitely more complicated. This is exactly where Princess Anne enters the picture, and her role in this entire scandal is utterly fascinating precisely because she says absolutely nothing. The Princess Royal is the hardest-working member of the British royal family, bar none. She completed a staggering 478 official engagements in 2025 alone, outpacing William, Charles, and everyone else. At 74 years old, she follows a fiercely strict personal code built on duty, absolute discretion, and institutional dignity. She has known Camilla for decades, moving in the same elite horse-riding circles long before the scandalous affair became public knowledge. But Anne is, first and foremost, deeply loyal to the survival of the royal institution itself. She witnessed the catastrophic damage Charles's affair did to the monarchy, she saw Diana's public suffering, and she watched the immense strain it put on William. She has never given a tell-all interview, never written a bitter memoir, and never complained. So, when reports confirm that Anne was physically present during the Windsor removal and gave what insiders describe as silent approval, it is incredibly significant. In the royal world, silence is a weapon, and Anne does not do things by accident. If she believed William was stepping out of line or acting purely out of childish spite, she would have stopped it immediately behind closed doors. Her refusal to intervene, her refusal to even raise an eyebrow, is the ultimate validation of William's authority. It proves that the old guard recognizes William's ruthless approach as exactly what the monarchy needs to survive. But the location of this silent endorsement was no coincidence. Windsor Castle isn't just a picturesque weekend retreat, it is the 1,000-year-old symbolic heart of the British monarchy, and more importantly, it has become William and Kate's carefully guarded fortress. By physically relocating their family to Adelaide Cottage on the Windsor estate, the Prince and Princess of Wales established their own impenetrable centre of gravity, entirely separate from the bureaucratic, leaky machinery of Buckingham Palace. Windsor carries the accumulated authority of 1,000 years of history. It survived the English Civil War, the Blitz, and it is the final resting place of Queen Elizabeth II. By having a non-royal relative forcibly removed from this specific, sacred ground, William sent an unmistakable, visceral message about ownership. He wasn't just saying that Camilla's grandson didn't belong at a family lunch, he was declaring that Camilla's civilian family does not belong in the institution's future. It was a brutal reminder that the grace periods granted by Charles are officially over. William is drawing a hard, impenetrable line around his future court, and he is enforcing those borders with zero hesitation. The old rules simply no longer apply in William's territory. And the urgency of these new rules is being driven by a reality the palace is desperately trying to manage. The mainstream media is still operating under the comforting illusion that we are waiting for a transition of power, but the shocking truth is that the transition has already happened in everything but name. The British monarchy is at a genuine, irreversible turning point. King Charles is 77, and while he plans to reduce his cancer treatments in 2026 for major events like the Washington, D.C. state visit, his physical capacity is naturally shifting. Simultaneously, Camilla is facing her own turning point. After battling severe fatigue from pneumonia, royal insiders predict her role will change significantly after April 2026, stepping back from heavy duties. As the king and queen inevitably slow down, an immense amount of power, specifically the power to shape public perception and plan the institution's future, is rapidly flowing directly to William. The expansive, inclusive approach that defined Charles's reign, where the royal tent was kept wide open to accommodate stepchildren and extended relatives, is being systematically dismantled. William's future monarchy will be smaller, sharper, and utterly unforgiving to those who do not possess constitutional relevance. He has zero patience for complexity and no room for peripheral figures whose connection to the crown is merely personal. Camilla's grandchildren were simply the first to feel the harsh sting of that massive shift. They certainly will not be the last. The future of the crown has arrived early, it is entirely ruthless, and it has very firm ideas about who gets to survive the coming purge.